Thank you all for tuning in to WJT 98.3 FM, your voice, music, your station. My name is Jeff Badu, and I'm a parallel entrepreneur and a wealth multiplier. I'm the founder and CEO of Badu Enterprise LLC, which is a multinational conglomerate in the finance industry. And today we're going to talk about basically the whole debate or topic about whether or not you should pay off your student loans or you should start investing, save for retirement. It's a concept known as paying yourself first, which was strongly referred to in the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad and a lot of the Rich Dad book series. So today I really want to go through that and to make sure we understand the concept or the topic, and just so we have a very, very good grasp on this whole concept of whether or not you should be paying yourself first, or should you be saving for retirement first, or should you be doing both. Before that, let's kick it off with the market report. This report is as of August 7th, 2020. Last week began with stocks vaulting higher for the 10th Monday in a row. So Mondays have been very, very hot for the stock market. The NASDAQ reached a record high as tech stocks surged, and the dollar gained value following a poor July while prices for treasuries dipped, pushing yields higher ultimately. And then investors were encouraged by news of progress made toward another round of financial stimulus. So there have been talks about some stimulus going around to further help offset the financial and economic toll resulting from the pandemic. So basically there's a new stimulus package that is supposed to be coming out soon. It has not officially been released yet, but there are a lot of talks of it coming out pretty soon. And then of the indexes, essentially the Russell 2000 led the way, climbing 1.8%, followed by the NASDAQ, the Dow, the Global Dow, and then the S&P 500, which advanced 0.7% by the end of last Monday's trading. Stocks closed higher last Tuesday, led by the energy and communication sectors. For most of the day, equities were surging. However, the latest stalemate in negotiations over new COVID-19 stimulus worried investors. So basically, investors were worried because of the whole stalls in the talks of the COVID-19 relief package, or the second stimulus package you can call it, which ultimately put a halt on the market gains. Nevertheless, each of the benchmark indexes essentially closed the day ahead, led by the Global Dow, followed by the Russell 2000, and the Dow. Both the S&P 500 and NASDAQ inched up about 0.4%. Last Wednesday, investors pushed stocks higher on renewed hopes for a quick passage of pandemic stimulus relief and progress on a COVID-19 vaccine. So basically Wednesday, there were talks about some progress on a COVID-19 vaccine, and then the stimulus continued to talk. So this new stimulus is very big, and they're talking about it every day. They still haven't come to a decision yet, but hopefully they'll come to something pretty soon, because we need it. As you may know, things like unemployment had stopped on July 31st. And then there are a few others things that ultimately came to an end due to the fact that there was no package, there was no bill that was passed at that time. So cyclical energy and value stocks posted notable gains. And then each of the indexes essentially enjoyed positive returns. So overall, so far in the week, it was pretty good. So the week was pretty positive, led by the Russell 2000, which gained 1.9%. Followed by the Dow, 1.4%, the Global Dow, 1.0%, S&P 500, 0.6%, the NASDAQ, 0.5%. Crude oil and gold prices pushed ahead. Treasury prices fell, lifting yields higher. Large cap and tech stocks pushed higher last Thursday, while the rest of the market sagged. The S&P 500 climbed for the fifth straight day, gaining 0.6%, while the Dow jumped 0.7%. And the NASDAQ gained 1.0%. The Russell 2000 and the Global Dow each dipped 0.1%. crude oil prices, the dollar, and treasury yields all fell. Stocks were a mixed bag last Friday as the Dow, the S&P 500, and the Russell 2000 posted end-of-the-day gains. While the NASDAQ and the Global Dow lost values, investors showed some concern following President Trump's order banning U.S. citizens from using TikTok. So ultimately, we have a ban on the app TikTok, which is very popular among especially the millennial community, or WeChat. WeChat is another one. So basically, investors are a bit scared or they're concerned the fact that President Trump is somehow banning TikTok and WeChat to companies that are tied back to China. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to realize probably why they're trying to do it. It's most likely political related, and that's the thing that's a bit sad when it comes to these things. I mean, it's like, you're banning people from using an app just because it comes from China. I mean, everything in the world is made in China nowadays, so it's like, I personally don't really get it. But tech stocks lagged as did communication stocks. Overall, stocks rose higher week over week. Each of the indexes essentially enjoyed notable gains. The Russell 2000 was the week's big winner, and then which ratcheted up 6%, followed by the Dow, the Global Dow, and the Nasdaq, then the S&P 500. Year to date, the Nasdaq is nearly 23% ahead of its 2019 closing value. That is huge. Even in a pandemic, even in quote unquote bad times, turbulent times, the tech stocks are still doing pretty good. So that's very, very good. The S&P 500 has added 4% since last year's close, while the Russell 2000 and the Dow are close to recouping pandemic-related losses. So that's huge right there. And by the way, hope everybody's being careful out there. Of course, not just from the pandemic, but in Chicago, a lot of craziness has been happening on the streets. And then literally on the streets, basically trees started falling down just a few hours ago. For those that don't know what's happening in Chicago right now, literally as I was driving down on Clark Street, there's this ginormous tree that's covering the entire street. And I mean, it's pretty bad. We pretty much had a mini tornado just 2 hours ago in Chicago. Didn't know such a thing was possible in Chicago, but hey, anything's possible in the world, especially when you're in a pandemic and when the world is just going crazy. But you always have to keep your head up. You always have to stay in your lane, do the best that you can, keep pushing ahead, keep doing what you can. But ultimately, certain things are outside of our control. But what we can control is what we do or how we react to these scenarios or these situations. But overall, the crude oil prices are up 40.41 per barrel to 40.41 to 41.45 per barrel. Price of COMEX gold went up. Gold is up tremendous this year, up 19.89.90 to 20.41.30, which is huge. Gold is up big time this year. So far, the Dow Jones is down 3.87%. The Nasdaq is up 22.72%. That's huge. S&P 500 is up 3.73%. So we're recovering, or we're basically going in the black. Russell 2000 is down 5.95%. Global Dow is down 7.96%. And then interest rates are still at 0%. 10-year treasuries are at 0.56%. They just keep going down, at least so far this year. So what to expect this week? Well, actually, let me just sum it up. Overall, the stock market is doing good, especially if you're in the technology sector. If you're in the tech sector, you're doing pretty great. And the S&P 500 is not doing too bad. 3.73%, that's still greater than inflation. So at least you're making money by putting your money into the market. So overall, I mean, we're doing pretty good in the stock market this year. I never thought I would say that after discovering that this pandemic would be here for a long time. Even though we're in a pandemic, stocks are rising. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, but I guarantee you that the stock market will go even higher in the future. 10 years from now, where you see the prices, they'll probably be double where they are. So my point is, get in as soon as you can. Get in. I mean, just invest your money. Get into the market. Start looking up companies. Start researching. And try to find companies that will do great even during the bad times. That's my advice for everyone. It can be fearful at times when prices are going up and down and just left and right. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But what I can tell you will happen is that prices will be higher in the future. It's guaranteed. These companies are not destined to fail. These companies were set up so that they can continuously be successful. Companies like Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, they weren't set up for failure. They were set up for success. So if you have your money in some of these companies, then you should be doing pretty good. And as you can see, the NASDAQ is going way higher this year, 22.72% increase. It's already at a record high right now. Last year was at a record high. This year's at another record. It just keeps going up and up and up. And I don't think it will stop anytime soon. Now, it might go down a little bit. It might have a temporary shortfall. But overall, I don't think there's much to worry about for the long term, because even in a pandemic, we know tech can still survive because tech controls everything we do. Right now, as we speak, tech is controlling what we're doing. I'm on Instagram Live, Facebook Live, I'm live on the radio. Tech is controlling all of this stuff. Without the tech, we wouldn't have anything. To be honest, we couldn't survive during COVID-19 without technology. So something that can get you through the bad times and, of course, can take you through the good times, that's a good company to invest in. But nonetheless, eye on the week ahead. July reports focusing on inflation, the federal budget, import and export prices, and industrial production are on tap this week. So those are some things to expect. Prices for consumer goods. By the way, the stock market did end up a little higher today. Prices for consumer goods and services have been muted for much of the year, having risen less than 1.0% from last July. So that's the market. You can take it for what you want. It's going up every single week. We read the report, and it's starting to go up every single week. Mondays, it's gone up 10 straight Mondays, and this week will be 11th straight Monday. So in the report next week, you'll hear stocks went up for the 11th straight Monday. So I'm not saying that basically what goes up will necessarily stay up. Yeah, there will be ups and downs, but the ups will overshadow the downs. Just like with anything in life, relationships, marriage, work, business, there will be ups and downs, but the ups typically overshadow the downs. So treat the stock market just like you do real life, in that it's okay. We will go through some bad times, but overall we'll also go through a lot of good times. So just wanted to point that out really quick. So now let's talk about whether or not you should be paying off your student loans or should you be investing the money. Overall, I think it's best to do both. Let me just start off with the conclusion. Or let me just start off with my theory. I think that it's best to do both. Some people are like, oh yeah, let me knock out the debt. And then some people are like, oh yeah, let me save off for retirement. The reason why I don't think you should be paying off your student loans early is because you'll be in debt for the rest of your life. And that's just being real. And I'm talking good and bad debt. Now let me put it this way. I don't know a single man on this planet or woman that became wealthy without taking out a loan or taking out some debt. Some of the wealthiest people in the world today still borrow money. Amazon borrows money. Netflix borrows money. So the point is, you will always need, not necessarily even need, but you will always, in a way, have to have debt if you want to be ahead in life. And keep in mind, a student loan is an investment in your education. It's like buying a house. You're buying a house because you want something where you can build equity, where you can live in it, but you can also build equity and be able to sell it for a higher price in the future. Same thing with your education. When you're paying a student loan, you are literally investing in yourself. You are investing in your education. So there's nothing wrong with having a student loan. Now, you should be paying off some of it. Some loans do need to be paid off. High interest loans, for example. Those need to be paid off fairly quickly. Not necessarily all the way, but high interest rate loans you should be a little aggressive towards those loans, at least first. If you have a 3% loan, a 2% loan, or even a 5% loan, you have no business, you should have no business paying it off early, as opposed to amping up your investments and your retirement. I have a few clients, I'll share some stories. I have a client who literally took out money from his 401k, so he basically cheated himself. He took out money from his 401k just to pay off his student loans. That is the worst mistake you can make when it comes to retirement versus student loans. You should not do that. Cheat yourself just to pay somebody else. Absolutely not. Here's why. For one, and I'll get into more reasons later, but for one, you're paying basically his retirement is yielding him a higher interest rate or a higher return rate than his student loans. He shared with me his student loan interest rate was about 5%. I looked at his retirement statement and it went up about 10% for the year. And we're not even factoring in compounding. So anything that I say is just from a plain vanilla simplicity chart. We're not even factoring in the time value of money, which is money that multiplies over time, or compound interest. We're just talking simple interest here. So he basically lost 6%. He lost 5% just by ultimately investing or paying off those student loans. Now, here's another thing you might want to know. He took out money from a traditional 401k. Not only did he have to pay taxes at his ordinary income tax rate, so he had to pay taxes on his own money, basically. He also had to pay a 10% penalty. His tax rate was about 30%. So he literally lost 40% on his money and the opportunity cost to make money. So in reality, if you take the opportunity cost of 5%, the 10% that he could have made on his retirement, minus the 5% interest rate, so it's 10% on the retirement money, minus 5% on the student loan interest rate, he's losing 5%, plus 40% in taxes in the form of penalties, and also in the form of his ordinary income tax rate. 45% out the door. Not to mention, he gets to deduct up to $2,500. At least some people get to deduct up to $2,500 of the interest that you pay on your taxes. So in reality, it's not really 5%. It's more like maybe 3%. So when it comes to money, you really have to compare and contrast. You should not just do one or the other. Ultimately, it is your money. Like my client said earlier today, I had a meeting with a client. She said, ultimately, it is your money, and you ultimately get to make the final decision. If something goes wrong, it is your money. Anything you're listening today, it ultimately comes down to your money. So that is something to keep in mind, is that, I mean, it's your money. It's something that you make the final decision. Everything is going to bear on you as far as what you decide to do. So that is something that I want everybody to note here. That it's your money. You make your decision. I can only give you advice. I can only give you best practices from what I've learned from myself, and also from what I've learned from people as well. So the whole concept of whether or not you should pay off your student loans versus save for retirement is a heavily debated concept. Some people are like, oh yeah, pay off all your loans first before you even buy that investment property. I'm like, that's not good advice. It's just not. I can't lie to you. I'm not a huge fan of taking out loans personally, from a personal standpoint. Business-wise, I'm all for it. But overall, even from that standpoint, because a student loan is a personal loan, it's still an investment in yourself. It is literally an investment in your education. What if I told you that to this day, although I'm not paying off a student loan, I'm paying on loan on an educational course that I'm currently taking? What if I told you that? What's the difference between that and a student loan? It's nothing. There's no difference. You should always be investing in your education. How can you grow in life? You invest in your education. You consistently grow by growing your mind. Your mind is very important to keep feeding with knowledge, education, resources. So it is a heavily debated topic. Some people can't stand student loans, and I don't blame you, especially if you're not well versed in finances. You hate loans. You hate owing somebody. Even in the Bible, they say the borrower is a slave to the lender. Which, I mean, hey, that's the Bible, right? That the Bible, it's plain text. It's very raw. It's very laid out. Borrower is slave to the lender, which is fine, right? I'm like, hey, sometimes you have to sacrifice certain things or certain terminology or certain, things to make things look pretty or to make it sound sexy. Sometimes you have to sacrifice that and push all that pride to the side. We're talking making millions of dollars in your job, in your business, or whatever it is, investing in your education. So whether I'm a slave to the lender, whatever you want to term it, that's fine. Right? Sometimes you have to take certain words and you take it, right? You just interpret it the way you want to. Take it or leave it. That's the game of life. What I've learned is that in order to build wealth, you do have to use some form of leverage. Now, I don't know anybody on this planet who became wealthy without using some form of leverage. By the way, when I say leverage, I mean borrowing other people's money. Whether it's a bank, whether it's a financial institution, whether it's a friend, a coworker, whoever it is, leverage is basically, in this sense, borrowing money, basically. So, yeah, some people can't stand student loans and are willing to pay off loans faster instead of saving for retirement. This can be a very costly mistake. The reason why I say this is because you can literally be cheating yourself. If you're a doctor, you got $200,000 in student loans. Literally, there's no point in basically trying to pay it all off at first. Let's say, and some of these loans might be 20 years before you save for retirement. To me, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Do you really think, or is it really true that people truly work for 20 plus years in their lives? Like, what if something happens? What if you break a leg? What if something bad happens? Not saying it will, but what if? And what if they come out with a forgiveness program like they're talking about now due to the pandemic? And of course, they've always had forgiveness programs out there. What if those forgiveness programs can help forgive some of these loans for you? What if? Let's just say what if. So in my opinion, you should be doing both. Save for retirement and pay off your student loans. That's what it all comes down to. But let me explain a little bit further. The concept of paying yourself is very important. If you don't know much about it, read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. It teaches you, it goes a bit more in depth about the concept, uses some examples. But basically, paying yourself first is saying, you know what, instead of paying my bills first, let me pay myself first. Let me put the money into my savings account first. Let me put the money into my retirement first before it goes anywhere. And thankfully in the US, when you have a 401k, that's exactly what happens. The money goes first to your pre-tax accounts, and then they take the money out to the IRS, and unfortunately, you're the last person to see your money. But it's best to save for retirement before or while paying off those loans. So if anybody tells you, pay off your loans before ever investing, you might be trapped for life. And that's a real statement right there. You might be paying off loans for the rest of your life, and you will never invest a day in your life. That might be the reality of it. So do both. Do both. That's my advice. So let's talk about student loans. Student loans are, in my opinion, the second best type of loans to have, only behind interest-free loans. They do go on your credit, but ultimately they can help you build your credit, especially if you're making your payments on time. And they do come with tax benefits. You can deduct up to $2,500 of interest payments each year, which basically, I mean, in some sense, makes it partially an interest-free loan or a very low interest loan. So whatever you pay in interest, let's say that you've paid $2,000 in interest for the year, and your adjusted gross income is below $80,000 or so, then ultimately you get to deduct. You ultimately get to deduct the money. You get to deduct that $2,000 on your tax return as an adjustment to your taxes. So it basically reduces your taxable income. That's a huge benefit. That's really, really nice. So it effectively lowers your taxable income. And then typically it's not as high interest rates compared to other loans, although I have seen some pretty high interest rate student loans. Those, I would say, if you make the decision to pay the loans off early, please pay those ones off first. The high interest rate loans first before you go into the low interest rate loans. It does help you build your credit, so it does go on your credit score. As long as you're making your payments on time, it helps build your credit by boosting your payment history. And as somebody who recently graduated from college, it's typically one of those things that you kind of need in order to buy that house or in order to start building wealth. And then it's also an unsecured loan, meaning that you basically, if you don't pay it, they technically can't like come after any assets you own. I mean, they could, but it's unsecured, meaning that it's not attached to any asset that you own. They can't come take your college degree, for example. So it's an unsecured loan, which makes it one of the riskiest loans out there, especially for them. And then you can leverage the time value of money due to the lower than usual interest rates. So you can take advantage of those lower interest rates, use the money to invest instead, and make some money off of that. Use that compound interest, that velocity of money, or the time value of money to make more money. And then especially nowadays, you can defer the loan payments into the future. So with COVID-19, they do have programs where you can defer federal loan payments through September or so, and they're most likely going to extend that. So that's another thing. You can defer these payments, and you can use that money to now invest it into perhaps the stock market. Let's say you invested in NASDAQ or maybe Amazon. Now you can make about 22 to 23% on your money, which is huge. Way better than that 3 to 5% you're paying. So that's very big right there. It's not like a credit card that has a 22-30% interest rate. That you should be paying off. That loan, you've got to pay that one off. Anything that's credit card, and you're like, hey, let me debate between investing versus paying off my card. Pay off that card. I would advise strongly for that because the interest rate is way too high, and you're most likely not make that high of a return rate in the stock market. So, and from that regard, you're better off paying off credit cards. Remember, that's just for credit card though. Student loans is different. Student loans don't carry 20 to 30% interest rate. It can be anywhere from, I've seen 3%, and I've seen as high as about 10%. If it's 10%, yeah, you might want to accelerate a little bit. So that's ultimately something that you would want to consider. So, and then they do have income-based payment options. So if you've just graduated college and maybe you have a low-paying job or not the job you desire, then you can base your payments off the income that you have. Overall, it's very flexible, very manageable type of loan. It's not the worst loan in the world, trust me. Student loans are not all that bad. It has a very negative connotation behind it, but it can truly benefit you. You can use it as a benefit as opposed to a detriment to you. Although it feels like paying it off early will help get loans off your back, it's not financially sound. It's not a financially sound move because you will always, always, always have a loan in your name at some point in your life. Once you get done with college, guess what? Now it's time to buy a house. You have a mortgage. Same thing. Student loans, mortgage. Same concept. Then after that, maybe you want to buy a bigger house. Maybe you want to get into real estate investments. Whatever it is. Maybe you want to start a business. That requires another loan. So the whole concept or this thing about, oh yeah, we'll pay it off and then that's it. No, it's use loans to help you, to help build your credit. Now, there is a such thing as having too many loans. If your debt to income ratio is greater than 30%, then yeah, you should consider maybe knocking down some payments a little bit or restructuring the monthly payments so that your debt to income ratio, which is your monthly debt payments divided by your monthly income, that's your DTI or debt to income ratio, which is a ratio lenders often use to determine whether or not you qualify for a mortgage. If it's too high, if your debt to income ratio is above 30%, then yes, that's when we need to start aggressively paying down some of that debt or renegotiate the payment terms. I would consider the latter as opposed to the former, where you negotiate the payment terms as opposed to just knocking it down and that's it. You can lose out on investments. You basically risk the opportunity cost of having better investments on your side. So that's something important to note there. Paying them off early can basically delay other important aspects such as buying a home and also even maybe marriage, which of course that could be a student loan in its own self. Won't speak too much on that. But best to pay off high interest rate loans such as credit cards even before you pay off these student loans. Be sure to pay all your minimum payments on time on all your loans. So when I say don't pay off your student loans, I don't mean don't make payments towards them. I just mean don't pay them off in full, or at least reconsider. Sit down, run some numbers, talk to a financial advisor, run the numbers. Make sure your advisor also understands the time value of money and investments, because some advisors might just say, oh yeah, pay it all off. Which I don't think that's the most sound advice to give to somebody, just to say, oh yeah, just pay it all off. So overall, if interest rates are very high and you're not eligible to write off the interest, then yeah, you might be better off paying them off early. If your debt to income ratio is too high, then yeah, you might want to pay them off early. If you don't understand investments that well, or if you don't think you can make money on your investments, then yeah, you might be better off paying off those loans early. So it really depends on how comfortable you are, but at the end of the day, most likely you're better off not paying them off like basically way too soon or way early in advance. Just note that student loan, in most cases, nothing more than a bill. It's just your typical monthly bill, and we'll always have bills to pay. Nobody on this planet that I know that's above the age of 18 has no bills. I've never heard of such a thing. Somebody that's above 18 with no bills, doesn't happen. Until the day you die, God forbid, right? But of course it will happen. You will have bills, and basically a student loan is nothing more than a bill. Now let's talk about saving for retirement. Always pay yourself first, meaning that basically before you make plans to pay off your student loan, try to, for example, save for your 401k, because you can take advantage of the employer match, where it's free money that's going to you. Majority of Americans aren't saving for retirement, unfortunately, especially now during COVID-19 pandemic. They're barely making ends meet, unfortunately. And then there's some of us that are still working, still thriving, and are still able to pay our bills and ultimately invest and pay our student loans as well at the same time. Delay in retirement savings can cost you in the future. For example, you miss out on compound interest and many tax benefits. When you invest, the government tends to give you some tax benefits. For example, real estate depreciation, which can help reduce your taxable income. Retirement accounts are typically tax advantaged. Paying off loans can be very costly from an after-tax standpoint. You can also miss out on the employer match. So when you have a 401k at work, most employers, they match you up to a certain amount of your contributions. So for you to forego that, or for you to reduce your contributions for retirement, I mean, that might be a huge disservice for you. And overall, at least 10% of your gross income should be going to retirement each year. So that's something to note there. So if you make $50,000 a year, at least $5,000 should be going towards retirement. If you want to retire on time by the age of 72 and a half, 67 nowadays. By the time my age group gets to retire, millennials get to retire, it will probably be 70. So if you want to retire, quote unquote, on time, according to the American definition of retirement, you should save at least 10% of your gross income. For me, personally, I save 20% because I'm on an early retirement plan. I don't plan to work till the age of 70. Not even to the age of 50. Right? Maybe not even to the age of 40. So for me, I'm on a fast track to retirement. So I'm using that compound interest to boost and beef up my retirement so that I can live comfortably early on in life. Saving for retirement early will help set you up to retire comfortably, unlike some of your parents, a lot of your peers, and even your future loved ones. Right? Some of them won't be able to be comfortable for retirement. Most Americans are not ready financially for retirement. overall, I think that paying off student loans before saving for retirement can be very costly. It can be a costly move. You can miss out on a lot of these benefits, employer matches, tax deductions, compound interest, things of that nature. Only take out loans when you need the money. So we're not saying, hey, just go out and take out a bunch of loans. Ultimately, though, make sure that you're taking out the right type of loans to fund your college education. And then it's always best to work with an advisor to help determine which option is best for you. So don't go at this alone. You do have support. You do have people that can help you throughout this process, that can look out for your best interests when it comes to making these decisions. So overall, my advice is think about saving for retirement first before knocking down all of those student loans. At some point, your student loans will be paid. And guess what? If you're doing an FHA loan strategy where you're buying a 3 to 4 unit building with a down payment as little as 3.5% that can be fully subsidized by the government, then you can use the cash flow you're making on the building, the profit that you're making. Let's say your tenants pay you $1,000 a month. It's a 4 unit and the mortgage is $2,000 a month. Well, effectively, and let's just say you count yourself as a tenant, that's $4,000 a month because you would have had to pay $1,000 a month towards rent. So that's $4,000 a month minus $2,000. You're netting $2,000 a month. You can use that money to now pay off those student loans. So guess what you've done? You've eliminated your housing, which is typically about 30% or so of a person's budget. You've eliminated your student loans, which may be 10%. You've eliminated 40% of your budget as far as expenses are concerned. And then also, you're now bringing in cash flow. You're bringing in money, so you're boosting your income at the same time. If this isn't the smartest strategy on the planet, I don't know what is. But instead, some people would much rather pay off those loans, pay them off, and have nothing to show for it at the end. So my thing is, why not use that money you would have used to pay off the loans, take that money, invest it into an income-producing asset such as real estate, that all you had to put was 3.5% down payment, which can be fully subsidized by the government. Why not do that? Let that pay off your student loans. Easier said than done, of course, but I know people who've done it. Why not let that pay off your student loans so that every single month you don't have to pay the student loan? You have your tenant pay your student loan for you. And you get tax benefits. So now you're wiping out even more of the expense ratio on your budget. You get 4 more of those and you retire. Your income tax rate drops down to 0. The average American pays 40% of their money to taxes. Then 30% goes to housing. 10% might go to student loans. That's 80% of money that you're saving in your budget. When it comes to money, it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep. And when you play this game the right way, you will keep more money and you will be much more financially stable. So that's what I wanted to tell you guys, is that it's not just about, oh, I have loans, let me pay them off. Sometimes it makes sense to pay them off. But at the same time, you really have to make sure that you understand the game of money. Money is a game. Money is a game. You have to learn the rules and you have to learn how to play the game. I've learned the game. I've made mistakes in the game. I've burned and crashed in the game before. But I've used that burn and crash, those moments, to help me make better decisions. I'll give you an example. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to pay off my student loans that were $5,000 when I was a senior in college, or invest in a stock called General Electric or GE. So at the time I had $2,700. I could have used that money to pay off the student loans, which by the way had 0% interest because the government was subsidizing the interest while I was an undergrad. So I literally would have lost money by doing that. Why would you pay off a 0% interest rate loan? It makes 0 sense whatsoever. It's literally handing money to somebody. Like, hey, here's money. Here's free money. So what I did was, of course, this doesn't always happen. I took the $2,700. I first researched the stock. I did everything I needed to learn more about the stock and become comfortable enough to invest in it. But lo and behold, 2 years later, the $2,700 turned into $5,400. I doubled my money, didn't pay any taxes on it, and now I can use that money to pay off those student loans. I turned $2,700 into $5,400, but guess what I did? I used it for the down payment towards my first house, which was a condo. Right? Now that was a mistake. I'm not even gonna lie, but it at least helped me build wealth. I used wealth from one area to build wealth in another area versus having no wealth at all where I paid off for student loans. What happens when you pay off your student loan? Congratulations, your net worth is now zero. What happens when you buy a house? Congratulations, your net worth is now in the positive because you have equity in the building. So when it comes to money, it's a game you have to learn how to play. It's a very serious game that you should play it the right way, learn the rules, and learn some of the tools, the techniques, and the strategies in order to play the game the right way. So with that being said, I'll leave it off here. We're at 7:46 p.m. Central. Hope you guys gained something out of it. I feel like this is an important discussion, especially as people are going back to college, or schools are basically, the term or the semester is opening up. I know back at U of I believe this is literally my 10 years ago was my first day, or it was basically the first day that we had coming to the campus and getting acquainted and everything like that. I believe it might be 10 good years from now, or 10 years ago. But nonetheless, thank you guys for tuning in to WJC 98.3 FM, your voice and music, your station. My name is Chef Badu, and I look forward to continuously delivering you awesome content. Thank you. God.